Hey there, guys. All right, today we are back with some more of the Great War. This time we are on to week 139. The Kaiser Karl wants peace. The Sixtus affair. Before we dive in, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I would love it if you joined the Discord and followed me over at Twitch. And also checked out the Kickstarter at the top of my links. So that will be pretty much right below the link to the Great War video, blah, blah, blah. The original video that I do in the descriptions, or you can just go to the comment section and click the first link. That'll take you to the Kickstarter, where you can read the prologue and first 5 chapters of my novel for free. That's right, free. I like free stuff. I know I do. Go fucking check it out. Yeah, that's a threat. Kaiser Karl wants peace. Well, that's not Wilhelm. That's not German. That's the Emperor of Austria, right? Karl, a dude named Karl's in charge of Austria, right? I'm remembering things, right?
We see battle after battle all around the world, and yet no side can achieve victory. The millions of men fighting are obviously affected by the war each day. But unlike earlier wars, this war is total war, and it also deeply affects every one of the people back home. I'm Indy Nidell. Welcome to the Great War. Last week, the world was stunned by a spontaneous revolution in Russia that toppled the Tsar and then saw 2 rival factions vying for control. British and Indian forces occupied Baghdad, a real blow to the Ottoman Empire.
God, I love this map. I'm so curious how this map's gonna look once the October Revolution comes rolling in.
And in the Balkans, Austrian and Bulgarian forces began counterattacking the Toplica rebellion. Here's what followed. The British continued advancing in the Middle East, taking Fallujah, Deltawa, and Sindhia, and also spent most of the week advancing in the West. In fact, from the 17th to the 19th, the British and French took 170 villages on the Western Front, including Bapaume, as the Germans abandoned the line from Andechy to Oise, which they'd held for 2 years, and retreated to their Hindenburg line. The French were also advancing in Macedonia, capturing a mile of Bulgarian trenches and 1,200 prisoners north of Monastir on the 18th. And a few days later...
Damn, are we really at the point of the Central Powers are done? Because I said this before, like several Great War episodes ago, where I was like, I think Germany's at the point where they can definitely no longer win this. They're on the hill going down. Some of you disagreed with me, which fair. Fair. Y'all made some fair points. But here I feel like they've got to be done now. Like, but we still have nearly 100 weeks left. Because this ends like week 220 or something like that. It ends around there. We still have a year and a half to go. Because this doesn't end until November 11th, 1918. We are in March of 1917. I don't know, with all this progress I don't know how Germany's holding together, man. I really don't.
Later, finally managed to free Monastir, the current Serbian capital, from daily shelling. And what of France's huge ally, Russia? The new provisional government announced that Russia would remain in the war, but there were, as I said, 2 rival centers of government. Prince Lvov, the new prime minister, urged active participation in the war.
Wait, he's a prince? What?
But in response, the Petrograd Soviet appointed political commissars to all military units. Their main task was to urge soldiers to not fight. Also, in order to try and fix the constant shortage of food and supplies to the army, all men over 43 years old were released from duty, shrinking the size of the army. On the 22nd, Great Britain, France, the US, Romania, Switzerland, and Italy officially recognized the provisional government of Russia. The leadership of its army was uncertain, though, as this week the appointment of Grand Duke Nikolai as army commander-in-chief was annulled. But there was a lot going on other home fronts, too. Barrow-in-Furness lies on the west coast of England up near the Lake District and is
Britain, what kind of name is that? Barrow-in-Furness. Like, y'all made English, yet your English just sucks.
a fairly sleepy place. But during the war, it was a major supplier of both ships and munitions for Britain, thanks to the Vickers factory there. Since they set up shop there in 1897, Vickers had never really had a smooth relationship with the workforce, but things were in overdrive by now. There wasn't enough housing for the workers, so living standards had seriously fallen. Inflation was rampant. Workers were expected to work longer hours, and there were even tribunals to discipline those who were late or were seen as slackers. Since munitions fell under the Defense of the Realm Act, punishments could be heavy. Last June, the workers had gone on strike to protest the dilution of labor, with unskilled workers operating machines that had been for specialists earlier. That strike lasted a week, but you could see that another walkout of this kind was inevitable. And it came on March 21st, 1917, when workers protested the manager's refusal to honor a bonus scheme they had for finishing jobs on time, and against the arrest of union officials in Manchester and Sheffield. Soon in Parliament, MPs were asking why the Ministry of Munitions isn't doing more to help the women in Barrow who lost their jobs because the men went on strike. You got this conversation between an MP and the Secretary of the Ministry of Munitions. Is the honourable member aware that many of these women have come from as far as Belfast, and they are no more responsible for what has now happened than if there had been a breakdown of machinery? And are the women going to be stranded, and neither the company nor the ministry accept responsibility for them? The Secretary: we should be creating a very severe precedent indeed if the government, whenever a certain number of people were thrown out of employment as a result of the action of another body of work people, were to relieve them of their distress. The MP:
And this is why everyone should be a part of a union.
I would like to ask
Unionize
whether
your
these are the
workplaces,
same women
people.
who the honourable member himself said the other day had saved England during the crisis. 2 weeks from now, the government announces that it would take action unless work started again, including lifetime prison sentences for the strike leaders. Work resumed, though there would be another strike in May for the same reason, and the government would not address the causes of the strike, but at least built new housing estates which actually did settle things down. Something else happened this week away from the front, and it would have repercussions down the line. Karl had been Austro-Hungarian emperor for only a few months, and two things about him.
He looks so stupid. Those eyes are a man that has no thoughts behind them.
He was at least interested in peace, and he didn't feel that Austria should always act in concert with and subordinate to Germany, right? His wife was Zita of Bourbon-Parma. Her older brother was Sixtus, Prince of Bourbon-Parma. Now, Sixtus and his brother Javier had joined the Belgian army when the war broke out. They wanted to defend France, but as members of a ruling house could not be French officers, so they joined the Belgians. Back in January, one or both of them had met their mother in Switzerland, and she had given them a letter from Emperor Karl that detailed his willingness to make a separate peace between Austria-Hungary and the Entente. The princes agreed to the basic Allied requirements for such a peace. Alsace-Lorraine returned to the French. Belgium and Serbia restored as independent nations, and Constantinople goes to Russia. Karl wrote a letter on March 17th in which he generally agreed to these terms, and it was sent through Prince Sixtus to British King George and Prime Minister Lloyd George, and French President Poincaré and Prime Minister Briand. On March 23rd, Sixtus and Javier met with Karl and Austrian Foreign Minister Count Czernin to continue negotiations. Karl wrote a letter that stated that he supported French claims to Alsace-Lorraine. However, back on the 17th, Briand and his cabinet had resigned in France, and Alexandre Ribot replaced him. Ribot had no real interest in a separate peace with Austria. And none of these letters mentioned...
Why? Why not? Why? You'd have more leverage over Austria-Hungary in a separate peace, though. What the...
Italy anyhow, which was a pretty major component of Austria's war. And Italy had already said that in any peace, a bunch of Austrian territory must go to Italy. So next month, Lloyd George and Poincaré meet with Italian Foreign Minister Sonnino and Minister Orlando. Now, the former two did not tell the latter two about Karl's correspondence, but asked how Italy felt about lowering its demands. The answer was a big fat no, which is odd because it seems the Italians didn't know that Italian Army Chief of Staff Luigi Cadorna had, around now and apparently acting on orders of the Italian king, let Austria know that Italy still wanted the Trentino, but they were prepared to lower their demands. Now, all of this was still secret. I'm just saying it now because it happened now and will come back to seriously haunt Karl in the future. But it was naive to expect otherwise. I mean, what he was doing was basically sending out feelers for abandoning his main ally, Germany. And even the territory he was willing to give up in France and Belgium, yeah, that was currently held by the Germans. It's no real loss to him who has it. He wasn't giving up a whole lot of his empire. We'll see this explode in the future. If Karl was thinking about getting out of the war, one country was thinking about joining it. They might not have much of a choice as the German submarine assaults continued. On the 18th, 3 American ships were sunk, and on the 23rd, another. U.S. President Woodrow Wilson met with his cabinet and asked their opinion. To a man, they wanted war with Germany. Also this week, the French battleship Danton was torpedoed in...
Even though, you know, part of his promise at getting reelected was not to join the war. Really sticking to your guns there, Woodrow Wilson. You just got reelected literally a few months ago, and you're already going back on your word. Now, if that ain't American, I don't know what is.
In the Mediterranean with 296 lives lost, and the British hospital ship Asturias was torpedoed off the British coast without warning and managed to run aground instead of sinking. 31 people were killed. And that was the week. Allied advances in the West, the Balkans, and the Middle East. Uncertainty in Russia. Civilian deaths at sea, a munitions strike in Britain, and a naive emperor betraying his ally. Well, you got to call it that, right? I mean, even though there was basically zero chance of that peace happening, it's still pretty serious.
It's still pretty
What
fucked up.
would Germany say when they found out? German casualties for the war up to the end of February are reported at 4,148,163. Over 4 million men killed, wounded, or just plain missing. And let's not forget these starvation conditions now at home in Germany. And Karl wanted to propose an unacceptable separate peace for a war that his empire initially declared. That's pretty stupid. But what can you expect? If you want to read the incredibly detailed book, The First World War and the End of the Habsburg Monarchy, which was a major source of information for this episode, you can find a link below. If you'd like to learn more about Karl's predecessor, Franz Joseph, you can click here.
And that was Kaiser Karl Wants Peace, the Sixtus Affair, Great War Week 139. I have nothing to add here at the end. This was a good episode, very interesting. Yeah, I got nothing else to say. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.